Hello friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to take a look at this full moon that's coming up here in the middle of the week, the first week of the November month. And so let's go ahead and go straight to the chart. Let's see what's going on there. So here is the full moon chart, 5:19 a.m. on the west coast, be later on the east coast in Europe, of course, later morning. And one thing to note, what we do want to do, I want to make an adjustment to this chart actually. So in the TimePassages software, we have a choice of house calculation methods, and we don't want Placidus, we want the natural houses in this case, which would be with Eris on the ascendant, because we don't want to give a particular area's ascendant. We want to give just from Eris around to Pisces, and then we'll just note that the ascendant on the west coast is 26 degrees of Libra, which would be Venus, which is interesting if you're on the west coast. So it depends on where you are, where the ascendant would be on this chart, but the planetary positions are the same. And it is, a Scorpio sun opposite a Taurus moon in the middle of the sign. And this is actually interesting in that the ruler of the Scorpio sun, at least the traditional ruler, is Mars. And Mars we find at 0 degrees of Sag, exactly opposite from Uranus. So Mars is an important planet in this chart, being the sun ruler, and it is exactly opposite Uranus. And not only that, we have the sextile and the trine to Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. So this is again another lunation where we have these outer planets so prominently placed, including with Neptune now dropping back into Pisces. We still consider it a first house element because conjunct the Aries, 0 Aries ascendant of this natural chart. Think about it, it's very close to the ascendant. It will color the ascendant. If it's a personal chart and you do this, we have a 3-degree margin that we use, where if Neptune is within 3 degrees, even though in Pisces, 3 degrees of the cusp. And that's something you can adjust, obviously. So I'll just show you quickly that in the TimePassages software, you do have all these options, of course, including display options. And you can see that I've got the house margin set to 3, which is where I prefer it. So that's why Neptune shows up right on the 0. But guess what? Neptune is closely trine the 0-degree Mars, being right there at the beginning of Aries. So it's very closely trine that 0-degree Mars, and obviously making the sextile of 0 that 0 degrees Aries would making that sextile with the Gemini position of Uranus. So with all this Uranus, by the way, there's still one more thing identifying Uranus as prominent, which is the parallel. So if we right-click on the moon in the TimePassages software, we can see the declination, 19.9 or 19 degrees and 53 minutes. So only, about 1/10 of a degree off from 11. And then if we look at the contraparallel it makes also to Mars, we can see that, parallel. The parallel what it makes to Uranus is the one that's so close. So if we click on Uranus, that's 20. So you can see that, actually that's 1957. We just rounded to 20. And here we have 1953. So it's only 4 minutes of a degree off of perfect parallel to Uranus. So that brings Uranus, again, more prominently to view. So we want to consider that. We would want to especially pay attention to the fact that with Mars opposite Uranus, that's the signature for an accident. So please be very careful out there. Watch what you're doing. The impulse to do something all of a sudden is what Uranus brings. And when it's Mars, that's an action. So we do have the possibility for, you might say ill-considered action. You might say impulsive action. It might be fine. It might be just the right thing, but you don't know for sure if you make a quick decision. So double check. Very good to double check. And with Mars actually also making a 60-degree angle to Pluto, what does that tell us? Well, anger could erupt. That's the Pluto-Mars signature, that anger, you might blurt something out because you're excited, because you're energized. And sometimes that can be ill-considered. So, the recipe with utterances is to be sure before you say anything that it's not going to hurt somebody's feelings. It's that it's right. Is another gate that it has to pass to make sure it's something you want to say at that time. We want to also consider, by the way, the ruler of the moon, which is Venus, and Venus is located at 28 degrees of Libra. And again, this shows up in the Scorpio house because so close to the cusp. You'd say that it participates in both the 7th house and the 8th house of this chart, being located in the Libra sign, which is the 7th house, but still so close to the cusp of 0 degrees of Scorpio. Well, this again, when we had the 28 degree Libra new moon last October 21st, that was in this position, and that was actually a yod from Uranus and Neptune. At that time, 0 degrees of Eris, now 29, but still close enough to 0, you see, 20 minutes away, a third of a degree. So this is another yod condition to the Venus position, and that tells us that there is a focus here on our relationships. When we have a lot of Mars, it's good to remember there's also other people in the equation. And so that's the other side. That's the other thing that we'll want to keep in touch with as we consider what's going on now, what we're up to, where we can have our individual activity, our individual understanding of what needs to happen. So very important. Another thing we might want to bring into this, beside the 3 outer planets, which are all configured very close to 0 of a sign, we have Pluto and Neptune at the midpoint, and then we have the Pluto-Uranus trine, which I kind of think about as a rebellion, as a revolution, as a change. What needs to change, and what is in a difficult process of transformation with the Pluto in Aquarius, which is society anyway. So where does the society need to change, and how does our thought process contribute to that, and how do novel ideas, ways that we haven't thought of before, how does that contribute to what we're trying to accomplish in terms of an evolution of the society, as there was in the 60s, when, remember that Pluto and Uranus were conjunct in the 1960s, which was the hallmark of that evolutionary era as well. So what else we have going here is Saturn at 25 Pisces, Jupiter at 25 Cancer, so trine each other in water signs, and Saturn is getting ready to station to direct motion. I think not until, let me see, it will be not until the end of November the 28th. And then on the 11th, I think it is, November 11th, Jupiter stations to retrograde motion. So they're both going rather slow right now. If we look at the daily motion of this planet, it won't be very much because it's slowing down, getting ready a week from now to be in retrograde motion. So this is a pretty strong trine. It's close to the degree, you see, and it's also that they're both moving slowly, so they have more power. Now, what we also have to look at here is because Jupiter is also square to the Chiron-Eris conjunction, and Eris is almost at 25 degrees, so the difference between these two positions is only 6 degrees, or a tenth of a 6 minutes of a degree, or a tenth of a degree. So very close, a tenth of a degree apart, and bringing up Eris, which has to do with soul intention. So Eris, I've been able to show, and the research continues to bear this out, that Eris is a warrior energy, taking a strong stand for yourself, very important, going to depth within you, going to the deepest you have, what your fundamental principles and beliefs, very important. So we see that right now prominent in the fact that it's conjoined in the sense of being exactly semi-sextile. It's combined, I should say, and then also it's the square to Jupiter, which is even stronger, which brings it into prominence, and right there in the first house of this chart, Mars' own house, you see the Eris house. So it's very key to this whole situation that we need to take individual action based on what we deeply believe ourselves. What are our principles and values that we espouse that we cannot go beyond, and we have to articulate and stand up and be counted. Voting is very important. This is a voting time. And taking a stand, the protests are very important to be counted, so that it becomes clear with our actions, with our words, where we stand, where we particularly stand, and that's wherever you happen to be, that's whatever you happen to believe, you really have to stand for that. And with Chiron so close by, we do have also the inner wounding that we can recognize as, does this get in our way of maybe articulating our truth? Are we being too much of a pleaser or too much of a, no, I couldn't possibly, how could I, how could I take this on? We have to believe in ourselves, and sometimes that involves dealing with inner wounding of self-worth, where we may not feel good enough. We need to get past that and try to see what that's about, usually arising from early childhood. So that's very important also in this full moon configuration. Very powerful full moon. Really has a lot to share with us on just where we're at right now, individually and collectively both. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share about this configuration. Now, to me, it's also very interesting when we consider that Mercury is getting ready to station and turn retrograde in just a couple of days on the 9th. So when that happens, it'll be sort of where it is right now. Again, we can, if we right-click on it, which is what I've been doing on these planets, we can see the next retro is the 9th, and the position is 6 Sag 51. So in other words, it goes just 1 degree further because it's moving so slowly right now over these next 4 days. And then when it stations and turns retrograde, it will eventually move back to the position of Mars, which is slowly going forward. So we'll have this this Mercury-Mars conjunction shortly after the timing of its retrograde motion. And the next new moon, it's going to be when it is in retrograde, moved all the way back to Scorpio. The next new moon is at 28 degrees of Scorpio, and Mercury is in that same degree as the sun and moon. And so it's a very key point in the retrograde cycle, the cazimi with the sun, which is when Mercury is at the heart of the sun. That will be happening on the 19th with the new moon. It's 28 degrees of Scorpio. And if we look back to previous configurations, the quarter moon, which was a week back on Wednesday, you see on Wednesday, the 29th of October, we don't have Mars exactly opposite Uranus in this configuration, but we do have Mercury at 0 degrees a week ago, exactly opposite Uranus. So we have so much, and then of course the moon was in the same sign as Pluto. So we have such a strong, and then the new moon also of course featured some of these same things. I'll just show you the new moon really quickly. This is the new moon configuration from October 21st. And here again, it's 28 degrees of the sign. We're considering it very close to the 0 Scorpio mark. That's where Venus is in the current chart of the full moon chart. And look at how everything is lighted up that way too. It's square to Pluto. It's still got the 0 degree mark of Gemini, and with Neptune right at the midpoint. I mean, these are very powerful times and very powerful outer planet configurations that tell us that there's a lot going on with us individually. We're changing, we're responding to the cultural situation, which is very crazy right now. And we're just seeing the evolution of ourselves and as well the culture. And that's in the time frame of this whole summertime when all these things were also prominent. So it's a very powerful time of change, and we can see it in the stars and recognize that, and it's important that we do. So good time to keep your head screwed on straight. Use discernment. When I wave my mouse here at the Mars opposition to Uranus, I'm just indicating that is a very powerful 0 degrees of the respective signs. And so don't go off half-cocked, they say. Watch your steps. Try to think carefully before you speak, before you blurt something out, before you take some action that may be too ill-considered, it might be too risky. Double check. And with Mercury about to retrograde, it's also a time to double check, to expect to have some things that may happen, not exactly what we're looking for, some things that may happen unexpectedly. And we do also, with strong Uranus, and right there in Gemini, we do get also unexpected revelations. I love the Grateful Dead line. I always think it applies to Uranus, that once in a while you can get shown the light in the strangest of places, if you look at it right. Uranus, it's oftentimes intuitional. It's below the surface of our of our logical thoughts, but it's very important information that can come to us that way, and we need to, we need to be able to be okay with paying attention to that. So that's what's going on. We do have this very strong Saturn Jupiter, which I didn't mention. The contraction of Saturn and the positive jumping ahead with Jupiter are kind of antithetical. They're trying each other. So we're being able to proceed with caution, Jupiter, and awareness of limitations. This is Saturn, I'm sorry. What I meant to say is caution as represented by this position of Saturn and trine with Jupiter, which is also enthusiastic, go ahead. So we have a mix of those things happening, and it is necessary to think twice. It is necessary to think of the long view, which is more Saturn. It is necessary to have a feeling of what's the best for the whole society, represented by Saturn. Saturn is actually in a semi-sextile with this position of Eris, and Eris and Saturn together is defending the underdog, making sure that the society is functioning for everybody. And that's an issue that's on everybody's mind right now, too, with the way some of these policies are shaping up. So I'll transition back, and I always say best of luck with that. It really is best of luck. But, we make our own luck is the other way to look at that, because, and they say that the way to deal with the currents of history is to suss it out and figure out which way they're going and take a stand as appropriate to where you think the whole flow is happening. Take a look at that, the big picture. And we have a lot of Jupiter. That's big picture. So best of luck, and best of all, don't despair, because what's very powerful is individual perspectives. Because as the individual perspectives line up, like the iron filings do in a magnet, it becomes a force, and it becomes something that cannot be pushed aside. When you talk about the superpowers, when the protests were happening earlier in a couple of decades back, the statement was made that you have not only the Russia and the China and the United States as superpowers, but you also have the power of public opinion as a fourth superpower in this world. And it really is true. So that means that everything you do contributes to the whole. It puts out a vibration. It aligns in a holographic representation with what everybody's saying and doing and thinking and feeling. And when it all comes together, very powerful, very powerful. So that's it. See you next time.